Hello and welcome to my boss guide series for the Blackwing Descent, where I've compiled existing information combined with testing done on the beta to present these fights in a modern, up-to-date format. Before we get started, if you find this guide helpful, consider dropping a like, subscribing, and sharing this video with a friend. Otherwise, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoy. Magmaw is one of two bosses that can be done at the start of Blackwing Descent. This fight has 2 phases on normal and 3 phases on heroic. You'll need 2 tanks, 5 to 7 healers, and the rest DPS. Magmaw uses the following abilities. Magma Spit. This ability targets 8 random players, dealing unavoidable fire damage. Lava Spew. Magmaw deals raid-wide fire damage. This ability hits pretty hard, so consider alternating raid and healer cooldowns here. Pillar of Flame. Magmaw barrages the ground beneath a player's feet. The impact sunders the ground, causing an eruption that will kill players stood on top of it. The impact also spawns multiple lava parasites. These are slow-moving creatures with a standard threat table that burrow into their target when reached, causing parasitic infection. This deals fire damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, Infectious Vomit is triggered, dealing lava damage to all allies within 8 yards and spawning more lava parasites. So, do not let these creatures catch you. The name of the game here is kiting. Frost DKs with Chillbane's Talented are a great option as they can kite them indefinitely. If your raid doesn't have a Frost DK, hunters and mages can team up to kite them around. Molten Tantrum. If there are no players within melee range, Magmaw goes into a frenzy, increasing fire damage dealt by 100%. This ability stacks. If this ability goes off at any point, your raid is likely wiping. Mangle. This ability is used on the current tank. As Magmaw picks up the active tank, dealing heavy damage every 2 seconds for 30 seconds. Your tank should use heavy defensives or receive externals here. If the tank is not freed before the 30-second mark, they will die. Note that Mangle completely wipes the current tank's threat, so have your off-tank taunt the boss. The mangled tank also gains the Sweltering Armor debuff, reducing their armor by 50% for 1.5 minutes. The final ability Magmaw uses is Massive Crash. Magmaw brings his entire body smashing down on one half of the room, inflicting heavy damage and stunning any players caught beneath him. Raiders must move out of this ability and avoid being hit. Massive Crash also briefly stuns Magmaw, allowing 2 players to leap onto his pincers. From that location, they can attach chains with launch hook to the spike protruding from the ground. If only 1 player connects a chain, Magmaw will break free. But if 2 chains are connected, Magmaw will be impaled on the spike, triggering a point of vulnerability and phase 2. While Magmaw is impaled, and for 30 seconds, players can attack his exposed and unarmored head. Players will deal 100% increased damage to Magmaw during this period. After 30 seconds, Magmaw frees himself and the fight returns to phase 1. Repeat phases 1 and 2 for the rest of the fights until the big worm goes down. On heroic, Nefarian adds several new abilities to the encounter. The first being Blazing Inferno. A meteor of bone and fire are rained down upon the feet of a random player. The meteor inflicts heavy fire damage within the radius of its impact, spawns a bone construct that your off-tank will need to pick up, and sparks the ignition. These are fast-moving flames that swirl around the point of impact, dealing fire damage every second to any players within them. These flames dissipate after 1 minute. Avoid being hit. On heroic, there's already a substantial amount of raid damage going out. Getting caught lacking in the fire will most likely result in your healers falling too far behind. The off-tank that picks up the Blazing Bone construct will drag it over to melee to get cleaved down. It isn't a priority DPS target, but make sure it's dead before the next ad spawns. Whether that means DPS need to swap to it or not, depends on your raid's DPS. The construct has a couple abilities. It cleaves, so face it away, and uses Armageddon. At 20% health, the Bone Construct prepares to self-destruct, exploding if the cast finishes and wiping the raid. DPS must hard swap to the ad and kill it before this cast completes. The final new heroic mechanic comes in the form of Shadow Breath, and the introduction of a third phase. At 30% health, Nefarian begins to directly attack players, launching volleys of Shadow Flame at random players, dealing damage to them and anyone within 5 yards. Regarding positioning, have the main tank on one side of the platform, with melee DPS on the other side so as to not get parried. Healers will also join the melee stack, as being in melee requires the least amount of movement. Your Wormkiter will move in circles around the room, dragging worms through melee whenever convenient to help cleave them down. Then things get interesting regarding range DPS, because they have a few options for positioning on this fight. The method you're seeing here was to have all range DPS stacked away from the raid to one side. This was done to predictably bait Meteor and Pillar of Flame, swapping sides for every Meteor cast to bait the ignition fire on the other side of the room. Now, there are ways raids can optimize here. You can run 2 range groups, or you can have some of your ranged stand in melee. These variations generally make it so that, on average, players need to move less, but take on added responsibility. Now, something that applies to everyone is once Mangle is cast on the tank, the entire raid should position in the middle of the room in anticipation of massive crash, as this ability will be coming out shortly. Then, on Heroic, once Magmaw reaches 30% health, have your raid spread out as much as possible for Shadow Breath. If you can, try to time an exposed head with Lust just before phase 3. This allows you to skip through much of the danger for the phase. Burn the boss down before you're overwhelmed by raid damage. Manage all of that, and that's a fight.